Hello everyone. Today we are going to make the effect of the character dashing while flying. Of course, it can also be used for other objects as long as you need a dash effect. To make this effect, we first need two textures and a static mesh. We can find this static mesh in the asset folder. It is similar to a capsule. This UV is still the default layout UV. In fact, most of the meshes we use in the visual effect have this UV. Because it is convenient for us to control textures panner in the material to create more different effects. Of course, there are also some meshes whose UV is directly projected, which we sometimes use. Then these two textures are, one is similar to the caustic of water, and the other is a wave mask. You can download these textures for free on my Patreon. Here we also use a Maximo character as an example, which has a simple flying animation. Okay, now let's take a look at Material Dash Main. Here we use wave mask and a normal texture water provided by the engine. Then we use the common method to make distort, mask the RNG channels. UV tiling is 2 and 0.5, panner speed is -1 and -2, and multiply by 0.5 to reduce the intensity of the distort. In the shape here we use the wave mask texture. As we just said, UV tiling is 2 and 1. Add a random U offset value, left and right directions, then add the distort. Of course, here we add a gradient mask to the distort. This is because the texture is tiled in the entire UV, and each area has the same texture. The UV area we see now is 1001. When text scored is distort, the texture will be offset. We can see the texture in other areas will appear at the bottom of here. We can preview it. Yes. So add a mask to prevent the part below the texture from being affected by the distort. After getting this shape, power 0.5, multiply it by 2, and use lerp to get the reflection. Then its overlay shape, power 1.5, multiplied by 100, and added to the default shape to get a bright foreground and a darker background. Then we use this shape multiplied by 0.25 and add a gradient mask. It should be noted that the V tiling here is 0.5 because we need half a cycle of sine, that is 0 to 1 to 0, so this is the complete shape. Finally multiplied by Fresnel, an alpha channel in the particle color, so this is the opacity, and reflection is also connected. Next let's see the emissive color. First, use this texture again. UV tiling is 1 and 0.5. Add distort. Panner speed is 0.5. Then multiply it by the complete shape. Decrease the value again. Clamp to between 0 and 1. Then connect to the derived HDR from LDR. Add a particle color. So this is the Material Dash Main. In short, we just use a tiled noise texture to create this material. For example, we can use any noise textures, then perform texture coordinate operations on it. U tiling is slightly larger, V tiling is slightly smaller. Add panner speed, and a distort can achieve a similar effect. Next, let's take a look at Material Dash Glow. Here we use another texture. First, it's the same distort. We still use the normal texture water provided by the engine. Its UV tiling is 1 and 0.75, speed is 0.1 and -0.05. We can adjust these values according to our needs. If this value is larger, the dash speed will be faster, and these are all the same. Next, we blend these caustic textures. The first one is the default shape, and its speed is -0.2 and -1. The second one is similar to the shape in Material Dash Main, with U tiling of 2, V tiling is 0.5, speed is 0.2 and -0.25. Then use lerp to blend them. Alpha is the gradient mask in the V direction. Okay, this is our shape. Next, Mask the area below and multiply it by 5 to make its value more clearly. Then clamp its value to 0 to 1 so that the opacity effect will be right. And multiply it by the alpha channel in the particle color and the Fresnel. Connect it to the depth fade. This is our opacity. Then for the emissive color, we reduce this value and power, because we mainly need the area above the texture. So the exponent value here will be relatively large. Then clamp the output value to between 0 and 1, still using the derived HDR from LDR. Finally connect it to the particle color and Fresnel. This is the emissive color. Of course, we can also add a world position offset to get dynamic shape changes. This is a very basic setting, mainly using vertex normal world space multiplied by a noise texture and a gradient mask, because in static mesh we only need the front part, that is, the area above the texture, to be affected by the world position offset. Okay, this is material dash glow. Now let's create Niagara. First add mesh renderer, use the mesh and material. Set life cycle to infinite. Spawn rate is 10. We can already see it in the preview. Then set a random lifetime in the initial particle, 0.2 to 0.3. For color, we still use the user parameter, which can be set to red by default. Next is mesh size. Since the mesh is facing the x-axis, we set the x-axis to a random value, 5 to 10, and keep the y-axis and z-axis at 5. Then add initial mesh orientation to get a random initial x-axis rotation. It looks better this way. Then add update mesh orientation in particle update. What we need is the x-axis. Set the speed to random 0.5 to 1. Then add scale color. The color here is still what we often use, float and curve, the default curve template, and set scale alpha to 500. OK. Alpha channel copies this curve, changes the curve scale to 1. Next, add scale mesh size, still use float and curve, a curve from 0 to 1. Yes, this looks pretty good. Let's add it on the character in the level. Oh, by the way, we also need to set it to local space so that it will attach to character correctly. Maybe make its size a little smaller. 0.5 would be a good choice because it controls the dash main. We have dash glow to the edge. Okay, let's create another emitter. Here we can duplicate this emitter and find the material dash glow. Now it doesn't look good. We need to make some changes to it. First set its spawn count to 20. And lifetime is 1 to 2. Color, mesh size, and initialize mesh orientation, we keep these default. Scale mesh size, we can use another way to control it. Vector from curve. Here we don't need changes in the y-axis and z-axis, so keep it at 1. The x-axis is from 0.5 to 1. Then scale color, we want to make its black area look a little less, so set scale alpha to 0.1, color to 5000. Also set the random mesh orientation, -1 to 1. This is all the modifications. Now let's take a look. Yes, this creates a dashed effect when flying. We add it in the night map and take a look. Yes, this will look cooler. So that's all for this video. I hope you like it. Bye.